data. So, and towards this session, towards this case of the crypto DAO, or we can leave the exact naming for you. I'm just quoting the mirror board document now. Like we could first start by a little bit talking about how do we approach this. Like there's a couple of things on the table. There is the mirror board. Thanks for that. I've been going through it and thinking about also how to approach it. And then we have the kind of approaches that we have, including this OBOC, which is organization by operational concepts, but which might also be useful to introduce, mostly for Jan, to a certain extent. There's also, I would keep the introduction short and more like flesh it out through the process and itself. And then, of course, we have the strategy of diving down. I have a couple of proposals for it, but the one practical thing I would throw in, like we could start with a short introduction, like what do you want to, Jan, Jakub, add to the mirror board and other things mentioned. So any opinions of other opinions or selections from this, from anybody, of how would we dive down into the case?
Perhaps we could like introduce a move or rule, or I'm not sure, like that we could go stop the process at some moment and go meta and say, oh, so now we are in the process of, let's say, picking characters or roles, just to like comment what we are doing in each phase.
That's a good idea. I think we could introduce it as a move. Like things can be packaged into different packages, but as a move, I think it might be an interesting simplification that everybody has to move, essentially. Of course, introducing a move is a rule, but that's we don't have to dig down into that. But so you described it a bit, but can you explain a bit more, like what kind of ideas you had there for the move? What is it like?
Are you asking me or Jan about the project?
The move, like you, like because you shortly explained the move you were thinking, but like, can you detail it a bit?
Yeah. So I guess the motivation was that I guess part of what we will be doing is mapping the case, but also learning how the mapping process can look like and what are the different stages or phases. And so perhaps it can be helpful to be explicit about like naming what we are doing and how and why. So for example, I don't know, because I'm not sure, for example, how to even start the process. And then, so for example, if we start by, I don't know, like picking characters. So it's like, oh, we are starting with picking characters because or we are shifting into another mapping stage, which we could call like So that was my kind of thinking behind.
Yeah, we could do a lot, but we're also like, we could keep it simple, like in a way, like a role without any definition is just an open role. Of course, it kind of pulls from conventions of being able to say something or so on. But like the one thing we could like propose as a move is like here's a simple thing: the move of proposal, which is kind of a meta move that you can whenever it comes to your mind, you can propose a change of mode or question if we would use a different mode. could also be a particular approach. Like, for example, one could say, I could take the point of view of looking at the structure in a certain way, and I don't think people probably mind that, then you probably can take that role, or you could offer it to anybody else, or offer it freely. But all that can come from like simply having just this one move of proposal. So that could be a simple start. But if you want to add something, that's certainly also possible. Does it sound sensible? Move of proposal, which allows for proposals. Of course, this is usual, like to tell to Jan, like this is not like in a way like this can happen in normal meetings, but there's this quality when you make something into a rule. You can see that it has a significant effect on people thinking about it and doing it. It significantly raises the presence of such things, which is a quality many games kind of rely on. So that's maybe something to mention. But yeah, so I could do a move of proposal and say, I propose a short intro to let's say OBOK or the case itself, and anybody can pick which one we start first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can start with a short intro. Maybe I can start, and Jacob, you can expand it some part of. For me, this project is based on three parts. One of the part is a course which is called Cryptoeconomics in School and Life. Is in the center of the map of Miro. My cursor is here. I don't know if you see it. This is one. Yeah, okay. This is one of the important part. And another part is also DAO, which is the DAO have a purpose to support this cryptocurrencies course because it's important element how to decentralize faculty of education, especially in the financial support, because the DAO have the goal the support this course. For example, payment to lecturing. Yeah, so that is second important part, and third important part for me is something like crypto saving fund, which is connected with DAO, and DAO organize and managing this crypto saving fund. Yeah, and from this fund we take the some cryptocurrencies which will be support the courses, especially the lecturer lecturer, maybe some students, because I'm thinking about final task for the students in this course, and maybe we have some budget for the best students or best team of students, and this budget will be starting budget for their next career in as a teacher or something like that, maybe. So Jacob, could you maybe explain more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perhaps I ask. I think you mentioned it, but what is for you kind of the main purpose, or what was the pain that it is addressing, perhaps for the university?
Yeah. So from the structure of the university is it is some I think there are many levels. Yeah, one of the level is only new courses. Yeah, only new courses which will be available for students at Faculty of Education. Yeah, this is the first layer. Second layer is DAO and the relationship between DAO and university. From the legal perspective, it is quite problematic. So we can create image of the DAO in our legal system, which is something we call non-profit organization. Yeah, something like NGO. Yeah, and this NGO is image of the DAO in the legal system. So and then this non-profit organization creates some official relationship with Faculty of Education. Yeah, and this is something like transfer or bridge, how to bringing, for example, some fiat to Faculty of Education. Yeah, yeah. So, can I answer to your question or not?
Yeah, perhaps if you mentioned a bit like why would the university want to do it? Like, what is their problem which this is solving?
Yeah, because
from your
because university have a problem with owning the cryptocurrencies. Yeah, the traditional system in an economic system in our university and Faculty of Education is traditional, and we don't chance own some cryptocurrencies. Yeah, because it's problem with taxes or something like that. So we can create some another organization like DAO, and for me this is better because DAO is independent from the Faculty of Education, and it's next it is another player, yeah, which can create some support or influence the policy of Faculty of Education. Yeah, for me it's very important, and for me also elegant. For me it's a very quite safety way how we can decentralize this our Faculty of Education. I think it's safety for Faculty of Education, and it one of the important reason for the faculty.
Yeah, and so yeah, because what I'm still perhaps not hearing, and I heard you mention it before, like why would the faculty want to do this? And what I understood when we were speaking was that they actually do not have that much finance, and this could be a way. But is this like the main purpose, like from the perspective of the faculty? Because I completely understand your motivations, but like why would the people want to do it in the faculty?
Yeah, I think from the perspective of the faculty is it's quite a new subject who can support them from the financial perspective. Yeah, because in our country and Masaryk University is a state university. Yeah, and the money for the university is from the our state. Yeah, but is here some pressure that the university can create own money or some business. Yeah, but it's problematic. Yeah, so I think the creating DAO and crypto saving fund is one of the step or attempt how to create some alternative financial support for this. Yeah, because many times some new courses ended when we don't have some money for support the courses or lectures. But when we create, for example, crypto saving funds, so it means that we can create continuous support for these courses. It will be independent on support from the Faculty of Education, from my perspective. It is answer for your question or not?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I perhaps add one more thing, which was that this model, as I understand it, is kind of a prototype what could be, but there's also possible ways how it could be changed or transformed. And one of the ideas was that the actual resources that are now in the form of the crypto fund, they could be something else also, or in addition. So for example, promises or commitments to unlock different resources which are available in the university, or spare resources for the students or the lecturers. So it wouldn't need to be like purely monetary. So that was...
Yes.
Yeah, that's also good to know. Like, I could do a short intro to the OBOK, and I keep it short, but like the one thing maybe worthwhile to intro is kind of the key concepts, and it's really much in this situation. It's also how these concepts play and what kind of perspective tools they offer you, like how they can make you look towards the structure in different ways. But and we'll keep it simple for now, and we can add parts later. But I could start with just listing some of the key elementary concepts. Like one is roles, and I'll talk about it in a second. The other is scenes. Third is offers, and fourth is tokens. There's also filters, but I have an argument, by the way, towards our refactor, which I think we can keep it to minimal because it's almost like another topic in this side, that in a way filters could be included in the roles. But let's talk about the roles first. Like, one key thing is that the role is separate from, in game terms, it's separate from character, but it's also separate from what you would think of an agent, identity, person. It's more like a glove that a person puts in. Like, to make a practical example is like, you can think of like, when you go, say, to pick a normal example, like Facebook, there is this like choice space, you could think of it, of different kind of rights you can do, and you can also think of these rights as moves you can do. Like, you can put up a picture, you have this frame box that you can write a text, and there's details to it, how much, etc., and so on. But this is the role. The role takes in. So a person could even take an algorithm in some cases. But because of these reasons, the role is kind of heavily emphasizes this, your rights, or I think it's maybe even easier or maybe refreshing to think of them as moves in this sense of what kind of moves you can do. And if you kind of analyze, like, what kind of moves does this role have, you have this sort of both functional perspective, but also kind of personal perspective in the sense of what can I do. And another key thing is to mention in a way, like, everything, every move that you can make grounds on something. Like, underneath there is some sense of an organization that enables your moves. Like, moves don't float in empty space. Like, rights don't float in empty space. Like, you can, this is a quality that is common to everything. Like, for example, ownership is a bunch of rights, or moves, however you want to think about it. But it's actually different kind of set, usually unanalyzed, or only present in somewhere in the kind of vaults of law. It's different from, say, a house, ownership of a house versus a car or a toy. But those rights actually exist because there is an organization like a nation. If that is removed, there is no these rights, and there is no ownership. So while we can talk about ownership, even a fundamental concept to most of tokens, they are actually more fundamentally organizational concepts. That you always ground them to an organization, and this is true of moves as well. And this brings us to scenes, which is this idea of a kind of functional space. So it's not so much a concrete scene or a concrete place, but it's more like a picture of a process. And it's mostly, the idea is to kind of front load it. It's kind of almost like the ingredients to set up the situation. So for the scene can incorporate a role, it can incorporate other scenes, sub-scenes, it can incorporate rules, it can incorporate objects, but the objects in the sense of what are the rules of the object. Like you could even say that this scene takes place in a specific room, even a physical room, and there is a whiteboard. But then upon that whiteboard, there are rules that you can write on it questions, and that is given to role that is freely available to anyone who enters into the scene. So you have like this sort of, in a way, like rough, but at the same time fairly solid analytics. Like, oh, everybody comes in, there's this role, they have this right or move to write to the whiteboard, and the whiteboard is one of the objects in the scene, to make a simple example. And there is a lot more to the scene. How scenes can incorporate other scenes, etc. But the key thing is, of course, it can work as a grounding, to said roles earlier. Offers are essentially, they wrap around any of the other structures. They could wrap around a role or scene or these tokens or combination of those. But the key thing about the offer is that it's potential. It's not something that is kind of incorporated to the organization yet. And the thing I worked upon, this is for everybody, is how to make this more detailed. And I kind of taken from the more lower level stuff I've done in EXA, this concept of slots, which is like that essentially you define what's in the offer, which is in the state of potential. It's a thing that could be, for example, a certain seed. But the wrapper of the offer is saying, well, this could be if, say, there was an acceptance from an organization. That's a slot. Like, that's making it the slot, that there's this thing that has to be filled, the slot, the acceptance from an organization, and then this thing can become defined. But the slots are very versatile. It could be, like asking acceptance from an organization and 500 tokens. And now it has like 2 red lights, and maybe there is a acceptance from an organization, but not 500 tokens, and the offer hasn't still actualized itself. But if the both are fulfilled, then the offer actualizes itself. And this is a key quality or a key area that is, in a way, often kind of under analytic in many structures, because you can even think of a web page, like, yes, it has a structural tracing of all kinds of protocols and places and references where it is, but it also has an offer. But that offer is actually in the protocol of web browsers, etc. And we just think of it as like a general offer in a very vague sense. But it's a key thing when you come to economics, because economics works through offers. Even traditional thing like, I'm offering some kitchenware for 10 euros. That is actually a thing that is also in this state of potential. It's a could be. And it has these slots. One is, it's an open offer, say, for 10 euros. And if that 10 euros comes in, it has defined already an activity which is transacting the kitchenware and the 10 euros into other places, which then executes or concludes the offer. Or doesn't even necessarily conclude it. If I have a bunch of kitchenware, the offer could stay open. So the offer thinking is a way to, once again, kind of quickly and in this sort of perspective manner, open up the sort of quite a lot of versatility of economic thinking into this. Finally, there is tokens, and it's a long topic. I could say just a couple of things about it, because unless we create a token here, and that we don't need it if we're utilizing, existing crypto, etc. Like we can go to reasons why later, but unless we create a token here, we don't really have to go to it. But the two things I would say about it as an approach is, I think of it as unitized logics of distribution. And the key thing here is, like, there is a unitized nature to it. Like it packages something into a package called a token, and that can have different natures. Is it fungible or not, and things like this. But then the logic of distribution is almost everything else. You can think of that the token has its own moves. So for example, does it have the move of transactable? How can it transact itself? Is it limited? Is it like open to anyone receive it, or is it like under certain conditions? Or does it preclude transaction? Or is there a transaction that is defined that whenever it happens, the token burns, which then kind of makes it more towards being like a ticket and so on. So distribution also contains the thing of issuance, or I have problems with the concept of issuance, but let's not dive into that. But essentially, that, like, how is the token born, or tokens are born, and that's logic as well in itself. Now, final key thing to say about it, just like the roles and other elements here, tokens are all grounded to organization. Like if you have a transaction possibility, it's somewhere. If you if you have a, for example, transaction possibility of getting tokens, it's organized somewhere. Somewhere there is an offer. That offer relates to a scene. It might have roles that have a governance towards that scene. And there is an extra condition which the token can kind of create this sort of offer of grounding, which is a topic that is really interesting, that but kind of maybe too nitpicky for this case for now, which is like it can say, I have this move and you can ground it like another organization. I have transactability, and if you accept it in this manner, you become the grounding, because it always has to ground. And this is, of course, when you create a token that has transactability, and then some other can, if they have a wallet, and if they utilize a transaction interface X, Y, and Z, which are the grounding, then that token can transact to another place. But yeah, this is getting maybe too nitpicky. But that's a very kind of high level overview of the concepts and how what is they gonna generate function as operative concepts. I could also say that what's operative concepts, it's not a coined term yet, or it's a term that has been developed here, but it actually kind of comes from a way certain games in the last 20 years have used concepts that are both conceptual and at the same time game mechanics. And that's a whole nother kind of world. But any questions on this? And also we can fulfill questions as we dive in. Okay, good. And for diving in, I have a proposal. So I make the move of proposal, which is that I went through the diagram with some depth, and there is a lot of areas to cover. Like making a whole analysis and building the structure would be, in a way, a long task. But I would propose a strategy that I call, first of all, bottom up, and second, fields first. And I should explain the fields first because it's not an existing term. But the fields first, I mean that you start from cases that are kind of working like fields for the rest of the structure. Like they're the ones that produce and have maybe in a way almost the most freedom and most design freedom as well. So practically, I could say that one of the fields is definitely the interactions within the DAO, and that can actually have multiple fields. And the other one I could say is the course itself, and this of course depends a bit like how locked in is it or not, but like, and especially towards the creation of the cards and then the cards as NFTs, because these two things are kind of like producing. They're not certainly the only things that are producing, and then there is this whole thing about the future economy or the developed economy producing in itself. But in a way, like deciding how it produces this economy, it's about the DAO and the scene within it. So that's what I mean by fields first, and of course with bottom up is kind of trying to build up or compose, for example, in the DAO, what kind of interactivity could there be, relating to both making decisions or making proposals, etc. But anything else would be also possible. How does that sound as a proposal? The bottom-up fields first. And which fields would you start from if that's an okay proposal?
Pardon, jenom momentík, já tady
sorry.
řeším
I think
sluchátka.
I think that we can start with maybe interaction with DAO, because it's important for in our cases.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the quite quite unclear interaction. Sorry, unclear interaction, because DAO and Faculty of Education, and I think in the first step is only interaction with true non-profit organization. Yeah, but the question is what the future is. Yeah. So maybe Jacob, you can say more. Maybe if you have some ideas about it.
Yeah, I guess it's perhaps a question for later, but there will be also this teasing out of what is the legal relations, in a sense, because like interface with the legal system, how to capture it, because I guess that's then, yeah, but I think that would be like a later stage, right? Probably.
I think so as well, because it also depends on the design. And I think there is a more open design space in terms of how does the DAO function in itself. And that has to be interesting, motivating, functional, you name it, these kind of things to put first into shape. And whereas the legal is, I think it's more like a puzzle in nature, in the sense that there's probably a somewhat limited way of solving it. There can be out of the box thinking, but it's really kind of tackling into one problem, rather than having this sort of open design space. But you kind of like have to maybe solve this more open design space of the DAO first, and that can inform the legal questions. So while it's a big problem, I think it's not like the first problem. So if we dive in, I could share the screen. I mean, everybody has the access, so of course one would encourage anybody to open for themselves, because multiple screens can be good, and especially in the case of mirror boards. But I'll do some sharing just to take part in the party. Let me see. I'll just okay. I'm trying to full screen it, but Zoom decides to own everything. Maybe I don't need to full screen it. It's okay. But let's see if I have screen control. For some reason I do. All right. So all right. So to approach this, we could first list, and we can take many approaches, but one thing we could list, and this is more like gathering material for design, and there's some material, of course, gathered in the side of it here on the left, but I would start from kind of people's own words of like, let's think of this as in a way it is a scene, but it also has a role in the structure, how it functions, and what kind of things you would list that it would do. Some are obvious, but maybe there are others that come to mind. Like from my sense, I could say, and by the way, if somebody's good at writing to documents, I appreciate it, because I'm not. I'm like, it's hard to me to write and think and operate at the same time. But there's a couple of things I would say is, like, of course, it's the head, kind of like a head of distribution here. Like it is like a space where inflows come in, whether it's from the course or from the profit or whatever direction. But it's and it's also the place where the outflows come out, like for potential courses, students, teachers, etc. But then the key question there is, how does it operate through all that? Like how does it actually come to decision? And so for me, like the key scene here is like I'll take a dive in from, let's say I imagine this role of a member of this DAO, and now just a general member, like in a way anybody. Like there's a possibility that the member could be anyone. This is approach or mentioned in the document elsewhere. It's like, is this a structure for more largely for the universities inside the country, or maybe even more largely? So there is a possibility to this role that it's open to everyone, or it's a possibility that it's open to anyone inside a university. So a checking condition might be whether one is a student or a teacher, or those are options. And of course, other conditions for attaining this role can be set, but just to start kind of thinking about them and listing them. But then what kind of rights could this sort of role, and what kind of moves this role could have? The one thing that comes to mind immediately is the move of proposal. That if there is a way to propose, essentially offer other courses or other processes of university, maybe in a more open sense, like doesn't have to be a course, but something that is related to this sort of academia or the principles of the DAO, essentially, and that you would have a right to offer such a thing, which then opens up another right, which is you could assumedly take part in deciding. Like simple thing would be a right to vote, but then that opens up this interaction, like what is the voting, or is it another kind of interaction of accepting them? And so, for example, if the proposals would have to list like what is the course or whatever about, what does it need, it could even list that it has a certain amount that it takes for itself as a kind of cutoff to that then it reserves to teachers or whatever it is, but then it could have like whatever it earns more of it, it could have a bleed over, like that actually flows back into DAO. Things like this could be in the offer of an event, a process for the university. I'm still looking for a wider word than a course, but something to that nature. But then I think there is an interesting economic direction in this, that if that would be actually the tool to access funding, is that the route would be that there is this offer, there is an acceptance process for the offer, and this would be the way that the funds are used. This is now thinking of the funds that are put into use by the DAO itself, which is a whole other question, but one might not visit that yet because like too many things at once. But let's say that there is a DAO that somehow has decided to share a certain percentage which is in use. But the way to address to gain it is actually through this sort of these offers, and then there could be empowerment for potentially everybody to take part in the decision of those offers, and then the offers, of course, could have differing amounts of needs, and they could ask for a lot or little, but that's then a condition towards its acceptance. It's like a quality that people might depreciate or appreciate in terms of their acceptance. So the reason why I'm also thinking about this, and this is more practical kind of game designy thinking of flows than any particular form, is that if one thinks about a more open joining, then having access to funds through offers rather than having, say, general payment of some kind is a much more robust structure against or for taking a lot of people in, because it allows for like nobody's entitled to anything but really what they then promise to do, essentially. And so that's a kind of like a rough sketch of a potential direction of main interactions, which is offering, and the other one making decisions upon offers, which certainly doesn't have to be everything. It's more like a sketch drawing with a couple of lines, but it has certain reason for the lines. For example, like how to accommodate for a large amount of people, and how to make the place as a discourse of what is actually interesting to create in terms of processes and content through this. Because of course the offers would be in a way points of discourse, and then everybody's evaluation of the offer would be their opinion of this discourse, like is it a good idea or not. So that's my starting. Sorry for being long about it, but it also took a lot of certain amount of diving in the structure itself.
I have more of a general comment that sort of like because we did a similar exercise when we analyzed universities from the OBOK perspective, and one thing that's stuck in my head was the proxy structure, like having proxy institutions, proxy people that can bridge between a traditional structure, a traditional institution, and a new one, a crypto one, a DAO, or whatever. We were speaking, for example, I remember giving this example of the need to have a university that deals with the state in order, for example, to give student visas. Visiting students, if they want to come to a crypto university, they would need some form of like legal document, right? So having these proxy structures allows for some bridging. So maybe some things, if you're having trouble mapping it legally, maybe sometimes you don't need that, right? You just need a person who will act as a proxy, and maybe that simplifies stuff in some cases. But yeah, it's just a thing I remember now, and maybe that's useful for this mapping.
I mean, could be like just a quick kind of incorporation of that into the sketch. In a way, like now we had just a general member role, but we can of course add more. And one of them could be a role of an institution, which could be, you know, like a potentially shared role or role that can be only gotten by people who are, you know, deciding for the university at large, etc. But the reason why one could maybe attenuate that is that they can offer potentially proxies. Like they could offer like, so let's take this to a practical case. There is an offer for a new university process. Maybe it's a lecture, maybe or a course, maybe it's something else. But the course has one of its slots that it actually wants or requires kind of an acceptance in the university structure, which is then a possibility to get credit, like to be credited as course this and that, or credited in whatever manner. But you could also have an offer, potentially at least, which doesn't require anything from a proxy. But it could also define its slot as maybe needing accreditation and maybe needing space, like two different things. Like that it actually needs to use certain spaces in the university, which then the other roles could potentially fulfill or not. But then you have the flexibility of like proposals that actually don't need anything particular from the university, or things that need very kind of general things, accreditation, or very specific things like use of space through weeks, this and that, use of this particular space, but they can all be in the same structure. And of course, other proxies could follow a similar model as well. Like, it doesn't have to be this particular university, but just like structurally looking at it, it's a more general take, opening to like you could have a cafe, not probably a type of a role, but maybe it's like there is an institutional role, and the cafe could offer spaces, for example, from its own side. And maybe somebody would like the actual course taking place in a cafe, for example. Anybody else? Comments, additions?
I'm trying to sketch some bits down there, but yeah, it's like,
see your cursor moving.
Yeah, I guess it's more like trying to find a language that would make sense, or that we could understand, like how we, I don't know, describe moves or how they are connected to roles. But yeah, I don't know how to approach that, so I'm just like doing random.
No, but
could we? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Could we maybe just kind of fix like a number of elements, let's say roles, and even just start with the roles, or start with roles and moves, or roles and offers, or something like that, and just try to populate those a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
that we don't go in all the width at the same time, and we just like try to set that up, and then we do the next one, and then we see, you know, does that already make sense? Do we need further clarification? But just that we have a bit of kind of a handleable, manageable beginning point.
Yeah, there is like a, you can think of it really like a Zoom, like, and in game design you can find designers of all types. Some like to work in the very high level view, some like to work through very low level view, or move between them, etc. And I think all of these are possible. Like, I'm thinking of these almost like sketch drawing, that in a way the DAO member could change its name, could change its moves, add more, replace, whatever. But it's like at least a line or a few lines in the drawing, and it's giving picture. And the institution member was just added. That's another line. But then you can already start seeing interactions with these lines. If I add another to kind of follow Martin, your suggestion is that we could think of the scene of the proposed offer as a template. What is it asking? Like, what kind of things does it ask? Because in a way it can be informative content. Like if there is a, like, you can make this sort of offer for a particular academic process. But what does it require you to say? And some of these things have kind of already said, like you can list like slots that are needed, like in terms of funds. You could have a certain amount that, let's say it's a course that creates NFTs, so it could have an uncertain amount that it produces, but it could have like a amount it holds, amount it reserves, and it could have a bleed over, and these kind of things could be in the template itself as possibilities. Similarly, you could have like possibilities of asking for spaces or accreditation, etc. And that starts to open up this sort of, what could the template look like? Like, what is the framework for creating content that is these offers for new university process? Does that sound like a dive in to you, Martin? Like, or does it sound like a good idea for everybody?
I think I need a door in. Like
you can even concretize that. You can imagine yourself in the scene. Like, okay, what kind of proposal you would do for a DAO that is until a kind of open university, and then that can kind of bring in things that would be needed for that proposal.
yeah, I'm not sure if I'm making a point here right now, but like maybe I just say something that crossed my mind before. I'm not sure if I'm like if we're inside or outside this game structure right now, but if I read the diagram right, which I'm maybe not, probably not, but the DAO here appears to be linked to its imagined purpose in a way that is not. I'm not sure if I'm really seeing the relationship, because it is here given to support a very kind of clear purpose expressed by a governing agency that is the university. But if I understand well, a DAO, then it's basically a rather free-flowing, free-moving entity that might just decide otherwise at a point.
Actually, that's the route that leads to problems in DAOs. Like really, like if the DAO can decide anything, and if the only way that the DAO can become really successful is to collect, like essentially to become the source that develops funds. If it has complete freedom, like if you haven't designed how it functions, like that's when DAOs blow up, because then suddenly it's only these persons who have power. Suddenly everything follows the advisory board, and like we didn't sign into this and so on. Like, so in a way, like really structuring these DAOs is a key factor. Like there's a lot of mysticism to DAO, but DAO is really just an organizational design structure that happens to be in code, and it doesn't really, there's nothing magical or like different about it other than that it offers certain structures of trust and distributed functionality from different parts of the world, but that's about it.
Yeah, so maybe then like this kind of this link between the governing system of the university and the governing kind of code of the DAO should maybe be the first, you know, phase of consideration.
But then you have to know what is the governing code of the DAO, and that's kind of what we're looking at.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean, right?
Yeah,
so then maybe I get closer to something that would feel like a bit of understanding here, that that would be the interface to consider first, yes.
Because the key thing, this is governance. These moves are governance. Like governance is a complicated concept with a weird history as well, but really it's like if you have this structure that you can have this move of making a proposal, you can have this move of making taking part of the decision. Of course, details to be added how that adds. That's already governance. That's key governance in itself.
And also maybe negative definitions of that, like, so what is the DAO not, you know, allowed to do, supposed to do, like sell all the stocks by CryptoPunks.
Yeah, it's really like, if you think of a board game, it's like full-on governance. Like you can do these moves. It's not usually thought of that way, but the board game governs the moves by setting up its rules. And in a way, it's often much more detailed governance than many traditional organizations, etc. But like once one is designing these kind of moves, you're diving into what is possible to happen and what is not possible to happen, which is like a key question of governance. Anybody else? Additions? The one potential scene I would add is the template for the offer. And like, not that we need to dive into that, but I think it's would be a good one possible way of fleshing out or detailing out the content.
Do we have another scene yet? No, we don't, right?
No, we started from the sort of perspective of a role, like
right. And to kind of understand correctly, like a scene would be something kind of akin to like a organizational action, or like a moment in which stuff happens. Is that how you would kind of approach it now, as a kind of equivalent?
Yeah, to kind of refer to the earlier rundown, like said, like all the roles have to be grounded somewhere.
Yeah.
So, but not that when you're designing, you might be designing them floating. Like we are now the DAO member. Like they have a move of, say, making an offer or making decision, potentially, if we go that way. Those are not grounded yet. And what would ground them is there is, like a scene of a template. And of course, that would be then grounded to, say, the a certain environment in the DAO where these proposals can be made, and another scene which is the decision scene. So
yeah. So like, am I right that I'm just in this moment that I'm here at the Miro board, but I'm a commenter only, so I cannot partake in the visual part? Is that correct?
I think that's the link is commentary link. That's actually true. Like I cannot write either, but yes.
No, yeah, no, because in that had I had the power now to do anything on this map, then I would just like maybe set up the scene as a kind of frame in which certain things could maybe accrue.
Yeah, I don't have the rights to the board, so I'm not sure if how.
Oh yeah, Jan is
possible,
the owner.
Yeah.
Editor, yeah. And Jan, I don't know if you want us to mess with your highly defined already structure there.
Yeah,
But-
I can switch the role. You can edit now. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, it changed. But
Oh yeah, see.
also a general question for Jan and Jakub also, since you're kind of strongly affiliated with the case. How does, for example, this as a direction, what we pursued, does it seem useful?
Yeah, actually, I think it's very useful because my first intention was create some minimal viable product in a frame of the project. Yeah, and I thinking about DAO only as structure for decision what happened with crypto saving fund. Yeah, but it's the primary step or first step in creating something bigger and creating more successful DAO and more DAO with more functions. Yeah, and for me is from my perspective and from my experience is little bit sadness, but important experience is that the Faculty of Education or university and firstly needs some benefits for faculty, and these benefits are very often some money and finance, yeah, and it's a primary thing for them, I think, yeah, and we create some way how we can give them some money, yeah, so we can move to next level when we can start debate about how we can cooperate with DAO and faculty. Yeah, but I think the first step is the money. Sorry for that, but it's true probably.
Yeah, like a couple of key things, and these are more rules of thumb than a particular system, is that one thing when you're looking at any system structure really, but it's true of games as well, like you're looking at, does it need to loop, which is usually it does, and how does it loop? Is like looking at the earlier structure, the first page, like I'll scroll there. So like what I read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is really like that the course in a way is an initiation, like the crypto economics in school and life. And it might be an initiation of the repeating of the same course in itself, but nevertheless, it's an initiation that feeds some funds if the NFTs sell all right, and maybe there's some other funds in the structure, yes. But then those become funds for new things. And that might be just a new course, the same course, but it might be also other things. And to introduce a second rule of thumb is like keeping in mind the kind of motivation of a member, of any kind of member now, not just the member here now. Like if somebody comes in here, what motivates them? And if they cannot make proposals, and if all the funds are decided by just a portfolio of funds, why would they be there? Or why would they come again? And why? So in a way, like if it's a source that is like, hey, there are some funds maybe growing, and I can make these proposals. Maybe it is that the members actually favor courses that try to also add to the funds. Maybe not. Maybe they pick a course that actually doesn't add to the funds, but is otherwise interesting. But it kind of creates this route that what motivates me is I can make this proposal that might normally have very poor chances in the university, but might get something here and might produce some funding and therefore make it possible. And I have a motivation from it. So in a way, like looking at these structures were one way of stepping at this, like it's a DAO that wants members. How are these members actually kind of motivated, and what makes them willing to be active members, which of course every structure needs.
Absolutely, we can create for members of DAO some influence to how to design, for example, the course. Or actually I don't know. Maybe it is interesting and important question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could also be like if it's a repeat of the same course or same topics. Once again, looking at this scene of a template, then you could add it there. It's like maybe what the offers would be about is what kind of changes or what kind of additional proposals people would want into the course. That's at least some level motivating. Is that enough is another question, but it's certainly like a way to think about it is to kind of flesh out that, like what can the proposal contain, like what things are limited and what things are open.
Is it at any point helpful to just forget about the term DAO and just like think that it's another organization?
It's always helpful to forget the word DAO.
That's a general rule. Yeah, because I think there's maybe some confusion here, like that, like as if it was like an auto finance creating a body that one just has to plug into university. I'm making it more simple than it is. But like, I think maybe just to approach it as there has to be some other organization that will link some financial funds to the operation of the university. Just to change the terminology might just help a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, like to put a little bit serious note to the slightly tongue-in-cheek comment, I do think like the DAO is important when you start thinking like, how do I enable this? And it is an enabling function, and crypto in general, blockchain certainly, those can be enabling functions. And when you're thinking about what can you enable or not, that's important when think about it. But like I think it's often kind of becomes this sort of locked mindset of people not seeing that they're just facing normal organizational questions or general organizational questions as they would face anywhere. And the DAO is just in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, maybe second reason for DAO is also that when we create a DAO, we can it's some like instruction modeling for the students, or I don't say it something like a role model, yeah, because we teachers or something another create some DAO, and this DAO is function he has a function how to support our courses, yeah, and this is a real DAO, and we can make real decision which have an impact on our courses or infrastructure of faculty. Yeah, I think it's a very important role modeling for the students that something like that is possible, and maybe the students can thinking about creating DAO for own school. Yeah, maybe. and how to create a DAO for own school, yeah, where they will be teaching, yeah.
So perhaps what's kind of coming to my mind is that the DAO can actually serve in this instance as kind of an intermediary step towards opening up students' thinking and engagement with organization design, which is the underlying actual added value, kind of stepping into agency of, hey, we can create different organizational structures. We can play with the governance rules and offers and moves. And by the way, we can encode them and something can be encoded and automatized, which is, let's say, the DAO layer in the technical term. But then it's kind of this imagination door opening towards organization design and experimentation. That's what is emerging for me.
Yeah, like from my side, how I would put it into words is like the DAO is a realizer. It's something that can make this solid, can make it concrete in a way. But then, like, the key thing is, what is it making solid? What is it making concrete? And that has to be kind of like in itself interesting as interaction, because it's only solid if I'm making concrete certain interaction possibilities. But of course, the condition there is that the interactions themselves are interesting. Otherwise, the concretization does not matter. And what DAO is doing is expanding the kinds of things that we can concretize, like we can pull people potentially all over the world and have them make a decision and trust that decision to a reasonable extent, or move funds, things like this. But that's really the thing that it's doing. Like, it's providing this concrete layer to content that is interesting, to interactions that are interesting.
But in order to get closer to this, should we just try to be a little minimal right now and, like, you know, set up what are the real basic functions that this thing has to fulfill? And then we see who's likely going to be involved, how are decisions going to be made? Because, like, now we have so many things spoken out and
okay, so from my side, like having worked with game-like systems, like, people are different, but for me, actually, like, drawing the big picture is like why the basic flow, why the basic interactions are interesting, what is the direction of the basic flows, is kind of like that's the sketch of the machine, and you need it before you have the details. Because like, if you dive into a detail but it doesn't have like a context in itself, it might be doing completely wrong things, or just not things that are not needed. So let me,
I think for me it was more like less maybe the question between detail and grand plan, more between things known and things to be discovered.
yeah. So if I try to, in my own way, to answer to your, like, here's one, yes, it's a large sketch, but it's kind of pointing out how the structure potentially could function, and it's changeable, and it's just one option. So if there was this, in a way, a discourse of what kind of things there could be in academic context, which is now thinking about these offers and the kind of people's possibility to decide upon them. That's a kind of an engine potentially right there. And if there was like potential that these could create funds, essentially, like tokens, so that would probably put this favoring offers that, say, include an NFT or have another kind of a crypto content in itself, which increase the potential that they could create assets, not just consume them. But nevertheless, like, maybe that's a required condition, and that limitation might be acceptable because it's not a hard limit, because once again, if it's about people's acceptance, they might accept something that doesn't produce tokens. But anyway, if there's that structure, and that is married to like another element is in this DAO, and I'll keep this simple just to draw the basic lines, is that the funds are generally lying on let's call it then kind of an investment pool, which is, let's scroll here, which is kind of this part, if you're seeing my cursor, the advisory portfolio fund, crypto fund, this part. And to keep it simple, maybe this has the funds, it has its own investment logic, and then maybe it's just for profit, maybe there's other reasons, we don't have to go there. But then say it gives a certain percentage of its funds, or it could be only what revenue it makes, it could be like if the funds are a certain amount, it can give 20%, if the funds are smaller, it can only give 10%. But whatever it is, that feeds back to fund the potential proposals. So when these are made, the funds that they can have or make offers towards are the funds that are the whatever is kind of left over from the investment, or whatever is given from the investment. So and they can then, if they, for example, produce more than they need, they can, that is put back to the investment itself. So that's kind of what I mean by major sketches. That's not looking at every line. There is the puzzle of like how to relate through to the university and how to work with the non-profit organization, etc. There is many details. Is like, for example, what kind of percentages would be given there, etc. But otherwise, it already has this loop flow that proposals are coming in, they're consuming funds, they're potentially producing funds. The funds, whatever is produced, goes back to this pool. The pool in itself invests, and it gives a certain portion of its gains back to the proposals, which then can tap into that or make offers towards those. So that's kind of what I mean by these sort of main lines. This is more looking at generally just systems, because I think also in this conversation it's good to talk about different perspectives of game and system design, because there are lots of useful approaches, and I think it's maybe practically also useful to introduce these kind of structures.
And Martin, perhaps just to clarify what you meant. So, yeah, could you please say a bit more? Like, what was your thoughts on what could be a way to be proceeding? Because if I understood correctly, part of it was about identifying like the basic functions. What should this enable, and then like identifying the needed roles or
yeah,
other
I mean,
ingredients.
yeah, in a sense, I mean, what you were also asking in the beginning, like, why is this organization there? Like, what is it supposed to do? What do we know are the, like, or what do we imagine these components to be, the members, the funds, or whatever? Like, I mean, you have kind of that logic drawn up there, I guess. And it's just like, I don't know, I feel that somehow I lack still the, I mean, the logics that you explain, they are, if like from my point of view, they feel rather developed already and rather kind of complex and fleshed out with much kind of mechanic detail. And it's just maybe that I have a hard time grabbing them.
Is there a particular thing that is hard to grab?
I mean, it's not so much that I don't understand what you're saying, because I think I do understand what you're saying. The question is how to diagrammatize and how to kind of, how to say, make it, I'm using the wrong word probably, but make it playable, make it so that one can find maybe alternatives to it and check this, because it's very, how to say, elaborate already. It's very sophisticated, and so like I lack a bit the kind of, you know, where's the point where I can hack in. So and then I thought then like one of the kind of things that was failing also maybe for me anyway, this access, was this kind of DAO thing, because I wasn't sure, did it have did it bring with it a new, you know, specific potential that one would need to incorporate. But so that's why I maybe was trying to kind of minimalize to some degree, which is not to say detail, but to speak of, you know, things known, things wanted at this point.
Yeah, like I think if one looks at Jakob's questions, like maybe that helps, or these general questions, like for example, the sort of reasons to existence, like in the scenario I gave, like the reason to existence is like an enablement of having not only new kinds of academic processes, courses, whatever, but also a different kind of funding source for them. Like if there is this sort of a DAO fund that develops and then around it is this discourse of new academic projects, or even traditional ones. Maybe people favor those. There is a new enablement in that. Like that, okay, I could not get funds for this kind of a course in the normal university, but here I potentially can. I can offer it, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. That goes back to the motivation, that why would a person join this? That, okay, they join because they can be enabled. Like, and if they have this, goes a little bit to the details, but for example, these lots, that they can also create potentially hybrids, that they utilize university space, but they can also utilize the funds from the DAO itself, and maybe get accreditation. And this would be also an enablement, because such forms don't exist. It is potentially a motivator for at least some people in the university. This has more question marks, but it's a potential, is that joining it might make them think about the university differently. Like if they have some say on spaces of the university or accreditation, that there is this proposal that asks for accreditation, they can bring it to the university table, that which is kind of like the decision process this structure really cannot touch. It's whatever university has decided it to be, but that could be the way that if they get a yes to that, they can come back and fill a slot for accreditation or space, and that can kind of expand their role. And why I'm mapping this first is, like, once you have like basic lines of how things loop, how the, for example, the funds could come in and still grow, things like this. And when you map the kind of motivations of the roles, like a normal member, an institution member, then you have a kind of ground where, okay, there could be a game here, like it's a soil, like there is some like richness to the soil. And then one can think about, okay, how to make, say, a way of making offers that is tapping into this motivation. And then you think like, okay, maybe it's, or how to have a decision that is not just voting, but maybe the enthusiasm could come from that there is a potential to discuss, make counter offers, things like this. That might be a direction, and there can be a kind of interplay there. But these kind of things come when you know that, okay, all of them are coming from this direction of motivation, like, which is most likely, like, let's have an expansion of what a university can be, for example. So once you have that direction, you can think what serves that direction as an interaction.
Perhaps like because I was thinking also that what might be helpful for me in some point of the process, and it relates to what Martin you said about the diagrammatization, that it seems to me that when we have at least some of the basic, let's say, entities kind of mapped in the visual space, that then it can be easier to actually start connecting those ideas or affordances to them. And so we can see, for example, oh, so this is the scene, here's the roles, there is this entity which we called fund, there is some logic which we are thinking about, there's some governing, and it could perhaps bring a sense of grounding or more coherence, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it's like, I understand that perhaps now we are in the phase that we are just like putting stuff on the table and not yet, let's say, cohering it or diagramming. But I think, yeah, this is what I'm perhaps resonating with Martin on, if I'm reading it correctly.
Yeah, I think the one thing that could help is, like, it's often with diagrams is actually what helps is to have different diagrams, like a singular. Oh, we lost Jan. Did he comment or? Oh, he.
Yeah, he said he had to go.
Okay, let's get playing here.
But the one direction towards the diagramming, like a practical one, could be, so we have this, for example, flow charts, in a way like you, Jakub, started already with the DAO member and DAO institution member. Now, and I think an intelligible flow chart for this kind of case is that you put roles, you put kind of like, this is really the moves they can make. Then you put, like, in the flow chart, okay, say the offer move goes to the template, and that becomes its own kind of small flow chart. You have another one for the institution member. And this is not in replacement. It's not like a better flow chart or a better diagram than the above one, which is more like a map. But it provides you a different kind of intelligence, because then you can see, oh, okay, like this pathway is actually missing this part and things like this.
Maybe I'm gonna jump into a more meta comment here, but I've been seeing, probably you saw it as well in Twitter somewhere, there's this DAO which are doing crypto and society research. So I've been seeing like this sort of like research DAOs pop up in some way or another, which maybe this design can be parts of it generalized into a research playground institution, whatever. And maybe that's also what's been happening here at XORG, and something we could think about, how to turn our work or some elements of this mapping into sort of like this funding for research structure in a decentralized way. Yeah, that's it. That's the meta comment.
I think so. Like it's a possibility. Like, in some ways, these structures, like, they have like very archetypical. There are very archetypical roots to things like making an offer in itself or making a decision. But I don't think they go anywhere really. Like, it's not that they have to be done away with. It is also like if one looks at the short history of DAOs, it's like they ended up they started thinking that everything will be different, but ultimately things are the same because like they're basic interactions you have to kind of solve. But then the devil is also in the details. It's like, what are there and how do they function? And I, for example, think like interesting interactions towards this sort of somebody offering something um, and then having a decision upon it, like, and what kind of interaction possibilities there are. Like, one thing I was thinking but didn't want to add is like you can have a curation. It's like somebody can decide that a person or organization is given a certain amount of funds that they can decide upon. And that creates another interaction possibility, and so on and so forth. Like there's all kinds of possibilities there, but yeah, I do think like it's about like creating new variants of these root questions. That's a key area in general.
Is it possible to get to like to say, okay, we have a theme, like, is it again the same question? Is that like a moment in an organization's life or so, which would work so and so, and we would kind of try to kind of just describe that one, just maybe also as a finger exercise in a way.
Can you describe in more detail? Like,
I mean, this kind of making an offer, for example, like how to unpack that? Like, what do we mean when we say that? What is the offer? Is that like I'm suggesting a course to be run, or I'm suggesting where to get money from? Who am I while I do that? Who do I interact with that? Who is that published to? Who can act back on it? And I'm not sure if that what I'm just now kind of rolling out there fulfilled in any way what I said previously would make for a theme. I don't know if that's what I'm describing here, but I'm just like trying to get some grip on like how to try and get these elements to play with one another and
I mean,
get a bit of a look at it, because like right now, like even just visually, I'm seeing a lot of nothing, like in my eye, and
I mean, like all the things you described are in the design space of an offer, and one could dive down, like for example, through the template. It's like, okay, they could make an offer. What kinds of offers they can make? It would be a matter of what can they put in the offer or not. Like that would be one key way of detailing it, because like that space is of course wide. Like the whole history of making something as an offer contains all these like open, so to a certain person, to a certain group, to only members of a certain organization. That's like the design space. Like that is huge, and everything is like selections down from there. Like for example, if in this case they could make an offer that is say free, like they can define their own academic process, can be even a new one. Or is it like it's free in description, but then you have to propose like timings, so you have to provide a timetable? That's a different kind of template for an offer. If there is like you can freely ask for any sum, or there are certain limits that you can only ask for this much, decisions that once again detail down. And like creating these particular forms of offer is really like the question of every decision should try to support what is the general motivation and the nature of the organization itself. Like,
sure.
like we limit the amount asked in the offers because we think that our general funds are this, and we actually want to favor multiple offers going through than one. So therefore, we put this limit in. But it comes in kind of like a detail chain, like details upon details, which then kind of lock down what the offer is. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's like
No, I get. I mean, I get you. I understand what you're saying. I think, but not but. What's a bit funny maybe is that like that we're using terms that belong to the OBOC space, which is offer, for example, and we use the identical term offer in this kind of context of the relationship between the DAO and the university, or the members of the DAO and the DAO, or like something, you know, then we also speak of an offer. Like, is that the same thing? I mean,
yes, I would say it's the same thing. Like, or it's like it could be in a different structure, but that in itself is an offer.
Because in the OBOC space, you speak of it as a potential, right? So like we're talking, if we say somebody can make an offer, then we're speaking about that somebody can kind of contribute a potential to the organization. Is that what would that be? Yeah. So
because, for example, if you're offering a course, that's potential. Decision upon it would make it actual. That would be one of the conditions. Maybe it has others, that it needs an acceptance for accreditation. And those are all how the potential can turn into actuality.
Right. So in some sense, in some sense, we need to kind of replace the term offer. We need to understand it as a kind of category of a component. But we on the ground level of how the organization works, we need to replace it with something like I suggest a course, or I bring some fund, or on the meta level, on the conceptual level, that will then be regarded an offer, all of these things, right?
Yeah, I don't, like, you might replace it or not. I don't know.
No, of course. I mean, we can still call it an offer also on the ground if it's bring.
Yeah, but like it's just structurally pointing out, like, it's an offer. It's also then pointing out that it's about where the dynamics of the organization lie, because it's a key thing in terms of like how the organization can change itself or change what comes out of it and so on. Like, so it gives you more information in a way to think about it as an offer. So, for example, if you know that the offers can only address like new courses or similar processes created, and there's no offer structures anywhere else, you know that certain parts of the DAO are frozen or locked, and you might want to address that or not, like, because like without describing somewhere potential that can become actuality, you don't have a dynamic or kind of changeability in that part or that frame. This is also why, to give a practical example, why proposals in a traditional board are offers. Like, if they are proposals to, I mean, they behave exactly in the same way, just a slightly different frame, but the whole operating behavior is the same.
So, but like, and how do we get now from this analytical framing to putting to solving or helping Jan and Jakub shape that organization, be it now a DAO or another organization, so that that it can be assessed whether this is a good idea to do in the case there?
Well, I would kind of open it up to Jakub. Like, what's your opinion? Like, in a way, like, maybe it's too high level, but it's also high level that I think one needs is this, like, you think, what is actually motivating here? And also, how does it run, like, and not just like create this course and then die out. You kind of have to look at the flows of this. And I was trying, maybe successfully or unsuccessfully, to sketch out this sort of like, how do we make all these flows to work? Like, oh, now, like, if I can act in this way in DAO, I'm a motivated outside member who can join. If there is this fund and it has the cycle of giving a certain amount, now we can make feed these proposals. They are not just empty proposals. So now that line is running. And
okay, should we just sketch that out? What you just said, that we can try and visualize that.
I don't. In some ways, of course we can make a small version of it, in loops.
Okay, so where's the exactly? Where's Pekko the person here?
Yeah, there's a startup here. This proposal uses funds.
Yeah, exactly. That was what I tried to set up. So here, so this is now you, Pekko, huh? You're the motivated member.
Or I would put so that proposal actually doesn't create funds. It asks for funds, but then what it creates, for example, or the course that is created from the offer proposal is the one that can potentially create funds.
Right.
Yeah. So
course created through proposal create things that create funds, something like that.
Yeah,
we'll split that up.
You can think of them as projects to make it very simple.
Yeah.
In a way, what the offers are making is projects. Those can potentially create funds, and those funds can go back to the general pool.
Yeah.
And in a way, the course currently described here is an example of this. Yes. It is a course, but the course wants to create card games that are sold as NFTs, and those NFTs are used to pay partly the lecturer and the students, but also I assume there is an idea of a bleed over. It's not quite described, but that some of the funds also go to the DAO itself. So it's precisely doing the same structure of what I'm describing, but it's just in one instance. And in order that the DAO would have a life, it would not be just one course.
No, for sure. I mean, that's I guess the idea. Yeah. So.
But Jakub, I don't know how are you feeling this?
Yeah, I think Jan would be better placed to say, but for me, I guess it's very useful to actually dig into the actual kind of flows, motivations, and what is meant by DAO, and kind of look at the underlying so to have it out there. And also what I was thinking, and it's kind of tying back perhaps to the diagramming in a sense, because it seems to me that if we were able actually at some point in XORG to have as an outcome of a mapping process or a design process a neat diagram with some kind of standardized way of capturing those things, that can be really nice, well, I don't want to say product, but really neat kind of outcome, which can be which can even for example for Jan, so if you are, for example, able to map it in a way that it's a nice infographic, just imagining, then when he communicates with the university or with other people, then it can be kind of it's kind of getting towards actually packaging it in a sense as a board game, right, or something like that.
Yeah. So I made a loop. I'm very proud of myself.
Yes. Yeah. It's good. It's and actually, this is actually in a way progress, because, like I said, what I've discovered with diagrams is, if I try to make one diagram, it never really works. It doesn't actually communicate to me. But it's actually kind of like taking parts and, this needs this kind of diagram. This needs a flow or loop diagram. The member part is actually better probably as a flow diagram, because, or
one can try.
Or both both can be useful in different ways.
Mm,
But
mm,
then they are kind of informative in their own ways. Like that's kind of my experience in like why like creating like here's the whole system as a diagram is often like a awkward exercise.
yes.
But a couple of things like because we're actually ending or nearing the end, I'll just say this. Like I think like I was worried that it's when I look at the case, it was kind of too large because it was both about solving how this star works, which is a big question in itself, but then it was also about like how to then represent it. It's like so that's maybe too much in for 2 hours. Hello, Jorge, we're just finishing. So
No problem.
no, so in this sense, like it was kind of solving 5 things or rather than a one thing, and this was also why I kind of pushed this like a high level view, because it needed to be addressed, like because it wasn't clear actually how does this function in high level. It wasn't just okay, these are the lines and let's just put the pieces in, but it was actually kind of what are the lines, and for this like yeah, maybe for that reason like we didn't get to dig down as much into just like okay, let's make this into a scene or these kind of questions in itself. I think it was useful in the sense of like I think those questions that were addressed needed to be addressed. Like the functionality needs to be there, and like my experience is you kind of need that first, otherwise it's not going to work. So for that reason, but yeah, like but any last comments from anybody, given that we're kind of squeezed on time as another meeting is starting up?
Yeah, very fast, I would like to say this was really nice, like the exercise of this mapping, like I enjoyed it particularly, and that maybe we can try to do the same thing for us at some point, maybe in a more playful, speculative manner.
Yes.
I think that would clear some stuff, and also, yeah, continue in this exercise. But yeah, really
The
nice.
visualization part, I think, is a really new dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be useful for Jakub and Jan to just make a couple of like a second iteration, whether that's branching off from the Friday sessions or a Friday session, we can think about it. But I think there is now material to make the actual kind of more clean presentation out.
Yeah, and I also found it very useful and inspiring. So thank you, and I will get back with feedback from Jan in the Telegram also.
Yeah. Let's
afterwards.
bring him into the circle, and hopefully it wasn't like too many new things kind of situation, but we'll see. All right, but hey, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and
Nice to
I
see you.
stopped the
Thanks, everyone.
recording once
Okay,
I
so
stopped sharing first, and then